This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Nigeria's Okonjo-Iweala says she's prepared for the task of reviving the WTO. Mass COVAX vaccination rollouts begin in Africa. And China's top political advisory body to begin its annual session on Thursday. Hello and welcome. You're watching Africa Live. We're coming to live from Nairobi. I'm Hannah Viviers, and here with the latest in business, it's Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business news. Somalia's central bank licenses the country's first and largest mobile money operator. And a former French head of state, Nicolas Sarkozy, has been sentenced to jail on charges of corruption. We'll have the details on those stories and lots more coming your way in the course of the hour. For now, let's start with the latest in current affairs with Hannah.
We're looking forward to that, Rama. We'll see you in a bit. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala has officially begun her role as the WTO Director General. Her first priority was tackling the issue of fishing subsidies. Asatal has more.
The long-stalled talks on fishing subsidies was Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala's first order of business as the WTO's Director General.
It's been 20 years, and 20 years is enough. That's my slogan. Now we have to get it done. So that's what I have to say. So we're totally in sync with you on that.
Since 2001, WTO member countries have failed to reach a consensus on fisheries subsidies. The goal is to eliminate subsidies that allow overfishing, illegal or unreported fishing to take place. One of the challenges is a lack of a global legal framework. This loophole allows large fishing companies to fly flags of convenience. This means they can register their ships outside of their countries of origin to those which have open registries. Often, the countries with open registries have more lax regulations. It also makes it harder to regulate the industry and can lead to overfishing. Overfishing has greatly impacted the ocean's ecology. The UN estimates 90% of fish stocks of large predatory fish have been depleted.
That's a message about the request to the WTO to urgently advance the discussions and conclude an agreement to end the funding of overfishing.
Discussions have stalled over what subsidies to eliminate. Some want all subsidies to be eliminated, while others want to distinguish between the good and bad ones. Subsidies, including fuel and tax exemption programs, enhance the capacity of large fishing fleets. The European Parliament's Committee on Fisheries estimates they amount to $35 billion annually. Astatal, CGTN.
Well, earlier, we spoke with Stephen Karingi, who is the Trade Director for the UN's Economic Commission for Africa. We started by asking him how prepared Okonjo-Iweala was for the task of reviving the global trade watchdog.
First of all, I would want to join everyone else who is celebrating that she's now the Director General of the World Trade Organization. So in terms of being prepared, in terms of knowing the role of trade in economic development, in terms of also being accomplished on issues that need multilateral discussions on global initiatives, she's very, very well prepared. And of course, coming from a developing country, as you know, development is a critical issue when it comes to thinking about international trade. And I think she brings to that role a good understanding and living of the issues that developing countries like African countries face. Of course, she's not going there just as an African. She's there to look at the how to balance all these issues that relate to emerging economies, LDCs, developed countries. And I think she brings to the role a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, both in terms of practice and also in terms of understanding of how the global economy works. I think the most important thing for us to recognize is that Africa is a big constituency of the World Trade Organization. And as long as we are able to bring the African perspectives that reinforce and enrich the participation of the African countries in the global conversations at the multilateral level, that is one way that we can actually, of course, support the reign of Dr. Ngozi at the WTO.
Well, Director General Okonjo Iweala will also face several other challenges as she takes charge of the WTO. Deji Badmo says more on that from Lagos.
I think it's an honor.
It's been weeks now since Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala was officially named the new Director General of the WTO. The euphoria over her appointment is yet to die down on the continent, especially in her home country, Nigeria. The praises keep on coming.
A very erudite woman, very sound, institutional builder. And many people haven't even talked about that part of the job. She built institutions.
As Okonjo-Iweala takes office, attention is now shifting to the enormous task before her and the WTO. Among the urgent issues, the 66-year-old former Nigerian finance minister says she wants to start tackling right away is a protracted negotiation on fishery subsidies.
She needs to reform the WTO. A lot of the rules and procedures have to be updated. Two, she has to look at the governance structure and then also the dispute resolution mechanism. That dispute resolution mechanism is also very slow.
Also on the horizon for the new WTO leader is a trade dispute between two of the world's biggest economies and key members of the trade body, the United States and China.
The WTO as a global organization cannot tick if the two major economies of the world are not ticking. And so that is the responsibility that she has. And I think she's happy because of the Joe Biden ascension to the presidency of the United States and the fact that he has talked about the need for multilateralism. That is going to make it much, much easier, for her.
In Africa, the expectations on the new WTO Director General are understandably high. The African Continental Free Trade Area officially started operating in January. Many are looking up to the WTO head to help make it more effective.
We are now going to depend on her to guide us in the implementation of our Africa Free Trade Area because other trading blocs may be having issues with us in what we are trying to do.
I think one of the things that she's going to do is to ensure that when agreements are being made, when policies, global policies, trade policies are being adopted, that Africa will be at the negotiating table. And that is the key thing.
The task before Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala is certainly enormous, and so are the expectations from all sides. She's promised to deliver, and many are counting on her to do just that. Deji Badmos, CGTN, Lagos, Nigeria.
Well, let's now look at COVID-19 vaccines in Africa. The UN-backed vaccine COVAX drive has begun distribution of the doses on the continent. The body aims to vaccinate 6 million people in Africa. That is 20% of the population by the end of 2021. CGTN's Wanja Mugai has the more details.
Kenyan Health Minister Mutahi Kagwe says the East African country is expecting to receive 1.2 million doses of the AstraZeneca vaccine and that inoculations would begin immediately the doses arrive.
The program will prioritize the elderly from the age of 60, those with underlying health conditions, as well as healthcare workers. Though the vaccination drive on the African continent has been a long time coming, it now seems like it's taking pace. Ghana became the first African country to receive its batch of 600,000 doses last week. Cote d'Ivoire followed with a consignment containing 500,000, and now vaccinations are underway. Nigeria will be the third West African country to join the drive. The most populous African nation will be receiving 3.9 million doses, with an addition of another 16 million later. The World Health Organization reports that another 24 countries will get the COVID-19 vaccine from the UN-backed COVAX program. These donations come at a time when there have been claims of an equal distribution of vaccines worldwide, with Africa being a victim. Recently, French President Emmanuel Macron proposed that rich countries transfer their 3 to 5% of the vaccine stock to Africa. The World Health Organization says 600 million doses promised to Africa will cover 20% of the population. Africa CDC head Dr. John Nkengasong says that amount of vaccines will not kick the virus out of the continent. He insists that 60% of African population need the jabs, with at least 35% covered by the end of 2021. Some countries on the continent have already been inoculating with independently procured vaccines. Among them include Morocco, Egypt, Algeria, South Africa, the Seychelles, Rwanda, Mauritius, and Zimbabwe. The massive vaccinations are expected to help the continent come out of the coronavirus pandemic. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
We're joined by Dr. Fiona Atuhebwe, who's Regional New Vaccine Introduction Officer at the WHO. Thank you so much for joining us, Doctor. Well, Africa has finally rolled out mass COVID vaccinations. How is the WHO coordinating the delivery of COVAXine scheme vaccines?
Thank you very much, Hannah. Yeah, I must say we are really excited to see the vaccines now get into our countries, and Ghana being the first country and Cote d'Ivoire on the continent. So WHO, being a technical implementation and policy organization, has set in place. We had the Strategic Advisory Group recommendations from the Strategic Advisory Group of Experts for Immunization for the World Health Organization in helping the countries determine their target population, given the epidemiology, given the information and data on who is being attacked most and who is getting the severe disease and dying most in the countries. So the WHO is supporting countries right from the time the vaccines are getting shipped to the time they arrive, to get them into the cold chain, to ensure that we've determined the target population, supporting countries determine their target population in the country using evidence that is within the country. Again, to going out and distributing this vaccine and getting it right into the arms of the people that it's intended for.
Doctor, how many countries have so far received the vaccine, and when do you foresee each country getting their share on the continent?
So far we have two countries, that is Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire, which both launched their vaccination campaigns today, starting with the Ghanaian president. Those are the ones that have received the vaccines from the COVAX facility. But we have 14 other countries that should receive their vaccine by the end of this week. Tomorrow we have our most populous country, Nigeria, receiving 4 million vaccine doses at 11 a.m. local time tomorrow. We have the Democratic Republic of Congo also receiving their vaccines tomorrow afternoon. These are two of our most populous countries on the continent. But again, within the course of the week, we see Angola, countries like Lesotho. We shall get East Africa starting to receive vaccines. Rwanda, Kenya, Uganda will start also receiving their vaccines. Small countries like Malawi, the Gambia, Liberia, all going to receive their vaccines. We hope that by mid-March, all countries would receive their first tranche of vaccines, because these vaccines are coming in tranches. However, there are minimum criteria that must be met by these countries before the vaccines come. And the countries that I've mentioned have met these criteria so far, and many more countries are going ahead to meet the criteria. Criteria like expediting their regulatory pathways. Usually we have a long process for any product, vaccine product or medicine product entering the country to be tested and tried and verified and all that. But countries have gone through agreements, the national regulatory authorities' discussions to expedite some of these processes, so that by the time the vaccines land, then immediately they are distributed straight into the arms of those who need them.
Doctor, you've mentioned some of the challenges on such a massive scale, distributing all these vaccines to various parts of the continent. What are some other challenges so far, and how do you intend to address them?
Before the COVAX vaccine came onto the continent, we already had countries that had bilateral agreements with manufacturers who had vaccine donations coming to the countries. And from these is where we get these challenges. So countries like Mauritius, Seychelles, Rwanda, Algeria. We've had health workers themselves. This is one of the first times we have health workers both as recipients and as caregivers. So they too are human, and we have seen some health workers actually resist this vaccine. Health workers are special because they are opinion leaders. They are key informants for us when it comes to anything related to health. So if a health worker says no to a vaccine, then we know that the people in his care, there are high chances that this could also not go right for them. So empowering these health workers with the right information. Then the other challenges we've seen are that target population. This is Africa. We have the target population defined, but when the vaccines get into the country, then the politicians now take over. And yet the first tranche of vaccines really was planned to be received by health workers, though the top politicians, ideally for purposes of building confidence in the communities, then do get the vaccine. We just hope that this does not get into all these countries. But we also have seen some countries that will have issues. Some of these issues are anticipated because the vaccine has just started arriving at the continent. But we anticipate issues with the distribution to the last mile delivery, to the service delivery point, to the people who need it, if this does not go on time. But we are working very hard, WHO and partners, together with the ministries of health, to ensure that we can get rid of all these challenges before the vaccines arrive in the country.
Thank you so much for speaking to us, Doctor. Well, we go over to Ghana now, which has begun inoculations against COVID-19, and first in line to receive the vaccine was the country's president. It comes after Ghana received the first batch of Oxford AstraZeneca vaccines under the WHO's COVAX program. CGTN's Nabil Ahmed Rafai reports from Ghana's capital, Accra.
Ghana's President Akufo-Addo received the COVID-19 jab together with his wife at a public hospital in Accra. The Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, and his wife were also immunized at a separate hospital. They are hoping that their public inoculations will help raise awareness about the vaccines. There is misinformation circulating among Ghanaians that claims that the vaccines have been developed to eradicate Africans. The government wants to allay those fears and assure people that the vaccines are safe. In a nationwide address on Sunday, the president tried to dispel the disinformation, telling Ghanaians that the vaccine will not alter their DNA, cause infertility, or be used as a way to inject tracking devices into people's bodies. Officials say the 600,000 Oxford AstraZeneca jabs received through the COVAX facility last week will be used to inoculate health workers, frontline staff, and people at high risk. A nationwide vaccination drive will begin from the 2nd of March. The vaccination will be carried out over a couple of weeks. Ghana expects to receive 2.4 million vaccines through the WHO COVAX program by the end of the year. The government says it has also approved Russia's Sputnik V vaccines for emergency use. It says it hopes to inoculate 20 million people with that shot. Nabil Ahmed Rufai, CGTN, Accra, Ghana.
Meanwhile, South Africa's inoculation rollout using the Johnson & Johnson vaccine is gaining momentum. Another 80,000 doses have arrived in the country and will be used to vaccinate healthcare workers. South Africa was the first country to use a vaccine in a study outside a clinical trial. The U.S. Federal Drug Authority has since approved the use of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. CGTN's Julie Shire reports.
South Africa was in a tough corner after 1.5 million AstraZeneca doses were found to be ineffective against the N501Y V2 variant, which drove its second wave. It took a bold step to use the Johnson & Johnson's vaccine on healthcare workers without the phase 3 trials being finalized.
The start of our vaccination campaign has so far gone extremely well. All provinces have established vaccination sites and have put in place plans for the expansion of the program as it will be gaining momentum.
We trusted enough that the data provided to SAPRA would allow them to take this forward. We didn't see that data, and I am uncomfortable with not seeing transparent data sources. But when the FDA released that data, I think it was clear it's as good as every other vaccine.
The gamble has paid off. Tens of thousands of frontline workers have so far been vaccinated without major complications.
I'm feeling great. I was waiting for the vaccine because I think it will help us. It will cure COVID so that many people don't have COVID. So I feel great. I don't have complications since I vaccinated. I'm fine.
I feel very well. It wasn't as bad as I actually thought. It seems more like a beast. It was actually quite important to get the vaccine so that I can actually build immunity against the virus, and then it will actually help me in getting to treat my patients well.
We have been even brave without the vaccine. You know, we felt like we suffered, we already had the illness and got well, infected, get well infected. We were reassuring ourselves like that it means we are well protected. But now that we have the vaccine, we just feel so confident that everything will go well.
Vaccine developers, including Pfizer and Moderna, are working to improve jabs so they protect against more infectious variants, like the mutated strain found in South Africa.
This is such a catastrophe and so dangerous to get this virus that just take whatever's offered to you at this point. As long as it's one of those 5 and whichever new ones come along, and there are lots in development, we've got some safety and efficacy data. I think that's all we need.
South Africa is negotiating with several manufacturers around the world to acquire vaccines. 40 million doses from Johnson & Johnson's Pfizer and the World Health Organization COVAX facility are expected to start arriving by late April, when a much wider phase 2 rollout will get underway. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Well, let's now take a short break and return. More news making headlines, including Morocco's airspace gradually improves in its exports after being hit hard by COVID-19. And China's top political advisory body to begin annual session Thursday.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia, Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
Welcome back. You're watching Africa Live. Morocco's aerospace industry has seen a drop in exports by nearly a third due to the pandemic. But as CGTN's Asset Tal reports, the industry is beginning to recover. Manufacturers have diversified into other high-tech areas, including medical equipment.
Morocco's Aerospace Suppliers Association says the industry has been comparatively resilient, and its first signs of recovery are appearing. Exports reportedly fell by $1.3 billion from $1.9 billion in 2019 due to the pandemic. Reduced air traffic lowered demands for civilian planes and hit orders along the supply chain.
Before COVID-19, a growth of 20% was recorded for several years. It is a significant technological development. But with the arrival of the pandemic, air transport stopped abruptly, which has impacted by a domino effect the entire industrial chain of aeronautics.
Morocco's government has been encouraging investments in the country by aerospace suppliers. The move hopes to match its success in car manufacturing by creating hubs to shorten supply chains and share expertise.
We have developed other products such as mask machines in partnership with the Renault. These machines are to provide mask manufacturers with a Moroccan tool, also produced 100% locally. All these small experiences pushed us to now create a biomedical cluster which will serve as a kickoff of a medical and medical devices industry in Morocco.
Many in the industry believe carbon-free production is key to remaining on the map of the global aerospace industry. The recent announcement by Airbus to make a carbon-free aircraft by 2035 has given hope to those in the aerospace industry. Asset Tal, CGTN.
Beijing is hitting back at criticism, accusing the United States of having a poor record protecting human rights in the U.S. A soon-to-be-released report by China cites growing racial tensions, rising gun violence, and a poor response to the pandemic. It points out that the country has less than 5% of the world's population, but accounts for more than a quarter of the world's COVID-19 cases. More than 500,000 Americans are reported to have died, nearly 20% of the global total. The report also alleges that minorities in the U.S. suffer from systematic discrimination. African Americans are 3 times more likely to be infected by the coronavirus than white people and are twice as likely to die. They're also 3 times more likely to be killed by police. The report also noted gun sales and violence in the U.S. were at record highs. More than 41,000 Americans were killed by guns last year, an average of 110 deaths per day, although more than half of those were suicides. There were nearly 600 mass shootings nationwide last year. Earlier, we spoke with our current affairs commentator, Einar Tangen, about China's accusations.
It's because they failed to, take adequate response to it, and that has disproportionately affected minorities. If you're African American, you're 3.5 times more likely to get it and twice as likely to die than a white American. So you see this kind of indifference to the plight of individuals. Also, the massive number of people who have been locked out of jobs, who have been put out of jobs, who do not have health care anymore, who are now suffering, people who are going to be evicted. The government has taken a very passive attitude towards this. They're trying to pass more stimulation, but there's so many things within that bill which have nothing to do with helping people who are going through this terrible tragedy. More violence incites more handgun ownership. In essence, the first duty of a government is to protect its people, to provide safety in their streets, homes, schools, places of work, places of worship. But that can't be done. The government has said clearly, we can't protect you, you need to protect yourself. But that is a underlying failure. You would say, in essence, it's a broken state if you cannot provide the very essence of safety in your society.
Chinese lawmakers and political advisors are set to begin their annual sessions this week in Beijing. The top advisory body, the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, will begin its meetings on Thursday. The members are to review the work report of the standing committee. They will sit in on meetings of lawmakers and will also discuss the 14th five-year plan for national development, which begins this year, as well as draft longer-term goals until 2035. Former U.S. President Donald Trump delivered his first post-presidency speech at the annual Conservative Political Action Conference in Florida. Philip Crowther tells us more.
It was more or less what we expected from the former president, a very long speech for his return to politics almost, if you will, because he did leave open that possibility that he might run for president again. But more on that later, because this was a long tirade of criticism from the former president. Of course, most of it for the current president, for Joe Biden. Donald Trump does not like anything that the current president has done. Of course, he has undone a lot of the things that Donald Trump put in place. Take, for example, the Paris climate change accords that the United States has rejoined. Take, for example, the fact that the United States, under Joe Biden, wants to negotiate with Iran on the nuclear deal, for example. Then there's the subject of immigration. Donald Trump believes that the United States is being soft on legal and illegal immigration. Again, all sorts of criticisms on behalf of Donald Trump here on stage at the CPAC Conservative Conference in Orlando. But I think more than anything, this might well be remembered for the president, the former president, I should say, still not letting go of the fact that he lost the election in November. He still says on stage that he won 2 elections in a row, which of course is not true. And a very large part of this crowd, full of fervent Donald Trump supporters, well, they believe him. And they also believe that Joe Biden could not possibly have won in November.
Well, I'll be standing by for more news, including what's happening in the world of sport. But for now, let's take a look at business headlines with Rama.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Here's what's coming up in business. Somalia Central Bank licenses the country's first mobile money operator. And the former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has been sentenced to jail for corruption.
It's just taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Let's start in the Horn of Africa. The Central Bank of Somalia has issued its first mobile money license to the country's largest telecommunication service provider, Hormuz Telecom. Now, the move seeks to formalize the country's digital payments infrastructure and to integrate it with the global financial system. Hormuz Telecom runs the electronic voucher card, or the EVC Plus system. It's a free mobile money service used by 3 million of its 3.6 million subscribers in the country. With this license, EVC Plus will now be subject to regulation by the central bank, and that ideally should boost confidence in the country's mobile money system. Although the EVC Plus system recognizes both Somali shillings and the US dollar, it only operates on US dollars because Somalia's economy is mostly dollarized due to a steep devaluation in its currency. Over in West Africa, the Nigerian leather industry is currently worth some $500 million, but it has a very ambitious goal. It aims to boost revenues by $1 billion, and that's amidst increased international and domestic demand for leather products. But some of the key players in the sector say they still face many challenges. Tessa Makende reports from Jos.
These African designs are just a few among Shuaibu Abdullahi's many works. He's been producing leather works like wallets, bags and face caps for more than 40 years, and he says the business is lucrative.
The leather business has been very profitable to me, my family and members of my community. We're all successful producers using leather.
He also says he has trained over 6,000 people in leather work in his community.
This community has become a household name in Jos because of their expertise in leather making. They say it's the best way for young people in the village to become self-reliant.
Nigeria's National Bureau of Statistics says the nation's leather industry is worth over $500 million. It's an industry that could continue to grow if demand keeps up. However, producers like Abdullahi say they lack modern equipment to increase their productivity, which is why they want the government to step in.
We can deliver much better leather works with support from the government to acquire better machines.
Experts say Nigeria needs to diversify its economy away from oil, and offering more support to the leather industry is one way to do that.
They need to be encouraged, they need to be packaged, and government needs to help them with marketing. Once there's significant input in terms of export, it's going to diversify automatically, and it's going to enrich the people at macro level.
The Central Bank of Nigeria has committed to providing loan facilities to leather producers in the country. Until then, people like Shuaibu Abdullahi can only continue to hope to cash in on the opportunities that lie ahead. Tassim Akende, CGTN Jos, Nigeria.
South Africa's pandemic lockdown has dragged on for the better part of a year. It slowed down the economy and it sent the unemployment rate to record levels, just under 33%. Now, women remain the main caregivers for their families and they've felt the pinch more than men. As incomes dry up through this prolonged lockdown, that's likely to get even worse. Here's CGTN's Julie Shire with this report.
South Africa's economy took a devastating blow during the COVID-19 lockdown, but women have been left worse off than men.
In April, which was the first month of total lockdown, so everything was shut down except for essential services. Of the 3 million jobs that were lost, just under 2 million belonged to women. The fact that the services sector was the one that hit most, so this affected women largely.
The clothing bank in Cape Town, which helps females start their own businesses, had hundreds of women flock to their doors in a desperate search for work.
We've really got a lot of applications. We had to turn the applications to doing them online because of the protocols, the COVID protocols. But there is a crisis out there. So we had to, in fact, start a whole food scheme during the lockdown because we were really getting a lot of requests from people saying, please, can you do something? Please help us.
The bank was only able to accommodate some of the women who had nowhere else to turn.
A lot of companies closed, and especially in the area where I live, most of our women works in clothing factories. And they were very hard hit in terms of companies closing and never actually opened after we went back to level 3. Most of our women in our areas is single parents, dependent on the social grant.
I'm a mother of one child, a son, and I'm unemployed. I'm at the clothing blanket at the moment as a trainee. It's really stressful. You feel small because you can't provide for your family, especially for my child. You can't pay school fees, you can't pay transport, you have to rely on someone else.
Women have suffered the brunt of the COVID-19 pandemic, raising concerns that gender inequalities in the labor market have worsened.
So your level of education is affecting how COVID is impacting you. So people with less than 12 years of education have been the highest hit in terms of job losses. This again goes to our history because of the inequalities in terms of education, inequalities in terms of access.
There's been huge progress in South Africa over the last 20 years to include women in the job market and elevate them to management positions. But many of those gains are being eroded by the marathon lockdown. Julie Shara, CGTN, Cape Town, South Africa.
Away from the continent, the former French president, Nicolas Sarkozy, has been sentenced to 3 years behind bars, but 2 years of that sentence has been suspended. Sarkozy has denied any wrongdoing. He has 10 days to appeal this ruling. The 66-year-old was found guilty of trying to bribe a magistrate by offering him a prestigious job in return for information about a separate criminal case against him. The magistrate and Sarkozy's former lawyer also got similar sentences. Sarkozy is also due to go on trial in a separate case from the 17th of March to the 15th of April. He's accused in that case of having fraudulently overspent in his 2012 presidential campaign. Sarkozy was the president of France between 2007 and 2012. Elsewhere, the UK plans to create another $7 billion grant programme to help businesses hard hit by the pandemic. This Restart programme, as it's called, will mostly apply to retail, hospitality and leisure. These are the industries that have been affected the most by the series of lockdowns imposed last year. Nicole Johnston reports from London.
Almost a year on from the pandemic, and London still looks like this. Empty streets and shuttered businesses. It's the same all over the UK. The country has been locked down since the start of the year and won't fully open up until summer at the earliest. But now the government is offering one-off grants of up to $25,000 for restaurants, pubs and non-essential shops to tide them over until they can reopen.
Well, I think given the scale of the shock that we've experienced, this isn't a problem that we're going to be able to fix overnight. It's going, of course, to take time. But I think the key thing is right now to keep supporting the economy as we have been, provide that reassurance to families, make sure that support is in place as we move through the roadmap.
Restaurateur Sam Harrison says the biggest problem for most businesses is trying to pay their rent after months of lockdown.
Rent is very complicated, but it's basically the biggest overhead for most restaurants. And technically, by the terms of a lease, most of us still have to pay rent while we're unable to trade.
There are 700,000 shops, restaurants, gyms and hair salons eligible for the High Street grants. Already, the government has borrowed $377 billion during this pandemic, but it has to be paid back. And there are indications that increased taxes are coming for high-income earners and corporations. The UK has borrowed money while interest rates are at an historic low. The Chancellor is concerned that just a 1 percentage point increase would cost the government an extra $34 billion a year to service its debt. Back at the restaurant, and Sam Harrison wants to see business rates relief, an extension of furlough and support for rent.
Sadly, a lot of restaurants and hospitality businesses are just going to run out of money. And, you know, most of us are losing money every week at the moment just to stay alive. I'm hoping it's not true, but I think by the end of the summer we could easily have 30% of restaurants in London closed.
And if that does happen, the fear is that there's little this budget can deliver to bring them back. Nicole Johnston, CGTN, London.
And back to Somalia, where one young woman is breaking gender barriers by overcoming the challenges of operating in a very heavily male-dominated taxi industry. CGTN's Wanja Mungai has her story.
When I was little, I was passionate about cars. I wanted to become a pilot one day. I didn't think of becoming a taxi driver in the beginning, but when the taxi company Recabo started last year, I decided to join it, especially because there weren't any female drivers at the time. I saw an opportunity.
Recap Taxi Company has close to 2,000 cabs in Mogadishu, but only 3 of them are driven by women.
The number of women who are taxi drivers was very low because of safety concerns. But since we launched the company, we have been recruiting more women.
Being a single mother, Asha is a breadwinner in her home. She provides for her 2 children and her elderly mother. Asha was a victim of early child marriage. She got married at the age of 16, but got divorced 3 years ago. Mogadishu is ranked among the most dangerous cities in the world due to frequent attacks by Al-Shabaab terror group. Somalia has experienced political turmoil since 1991, when President Siad Barre's military regime was overthrown. Since then, the country has not had a democratically elected president. Even the elections that were scheduled to take place in December last year have not been held due to a disagreement between the opposing sides. Despite all the challenges she faces, Asha is determined and driven to dispel the narrative that women cannot do well in male-dominated jobs.
Over these past months, I've been often using this taxi company, and even though this is usually seen as a man's job, today I prefer cabs driven by women. They're always on time and they are careful drivers.
With women like Asha braving new tasks, this could be a new dawn for young girls facing injustices like early child marriage and child labor. Wanjamungai, CGTN.
And I'll leave you there for the time being. I'll be back at the top of the hour. In global business, we'll be looking at the debt market, specifically liquid telecom. They've completed one of the largest dollar bond sales on the continent, raising over $800 million for the expansion of its broadband business at a coupon rate lower than some African sovereigns. We'll explore that in detail with the CFO at 1800 GMT. See you then. For now, back to Hannah.
We'll see you then, Rava. Well, let's not take a short break and return. More news, including Nomadland Borat win at Golden Globes.
The greatest journeys, the greatest sights, the greatest adventures.
Here in Panater, this weir allows the locals to walk on water.
We're far more than just TV news. We're your passport to the wonders of Africa.
To bring you stories of struggle, survival and hope.
So let's explore. CGTN. See the difference.
Well, in the just concluded Golden Globes on Sunday, drama Nomadland and satire Borat subsequent movie film won movie honors in a mostly virtual bi-coastal ceremony that was marked by impassioned calls for more diversity.
The critically acclaimed Nomadland, which is about a marginalized older generation of Americans roaming the West in rundown vans, won the coveted Golden Globe Award for Best Drama Film, boosting its momentum ahead of the Oscars.
And the Golden Globe goes to
Nomadland! The film also took the Best Director prize for Chinese-born Chloe Zhao. It made Zhao only the second woman to win at the Globes in that category, and the first woman director of Asian descent to win.
Look, Nomadland at its core for me is a pilgrimage through grief and healing. So for everyone who has gone through this difficult and beautiful journey at some point in their lives, this is for you. We don't say goodbye, we say see you down the road. Thank you.
Sacha Baron Cohen, Borat subsequent movie film. Sacha Baron Cohen, the creator of Borat's subsequent movie film from Amazon Studios, was named Best Comedy Movie Actor, while singer Andra Day was a surprise winner for her lead role in The United States versus Billie Holiday.
Marla Grayson, you've had a
The television competition was heated this year, as streaming TV emerged as a main source of entertainment in 2020, when the COVID-19 pandemic forced movie theaters to close and kept many people largely confined to their homes. Streaming services dominated the ceremony, with Netflix's The Crown and The Queen's Gambit star Anya Taylor-Joy receiving a Best Actress award. Netflix, which came in with a commanding 42 nominations, won the top TV awards. The Crown, as expected, took Best Drama Series, along with Best Actress, Best Actor, and Best Supporting Actress. Elsewhere, Black Panther star Chadwick Boseman, whose death at 43 of a non-disclosed battle with cancer stunned fans, won the posthumous Best Movie Actor Golden Globe for his last performance in period jazz drama Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. The usual cozy gathering of A-listers at a gala dinner in Beverly Hills was replaced by webcams in the homes of mostly glammed-up celebrities, small physical audiences made up of masked frontline workers, and a skit about self-involved celebrities consulting doctors with their coronavirus concerns. Zhang Meiyuan, CGTN.
The sport news is coming up after the break, including football clubs in Uganda under significant financial pressure as pandemic bites.
How would you create your legend? On the fields, on the tracks, in the arenas of Africa. Were you born